course, all the attention lately has been on a retired player. Tom Brady just can't stay away from the headlines, can he? We're going to talk a little bit more about his appearance in the Raiders coaches box this Sunday. Our Aditi Kinkhabwala had a chance to see those Raiders up close and personal in week one. She will see them again shortly here as the season continues. So let's see if she's doing her homework on this whole Brady situation as we welcome in Aditi Kinkhabwala here to CBS Sports HQ. Aditi will actually be on the sidelines for Houston and Jacksonville, which we'll talk about in a minute. But Aditi, we got to talk about the elephant in the room, Tom Brady, the NFL, and how they're feeling about some of his antics. You spend a lot of time in those production meetings and having those conversations. Is this really an area where Tom is getting any sort of early insight, or what do you make of the conversation surrounding Tom?
Haley, this certainly is a thing, and it goes back to what those production meetings are. The best ones are the ones where the coaches and players are honest with us. It is the responsibility of the broadcast team to tell the true and fair story of each team. Part of that is the coaches letting us in on certain things. It just happened with us last week in the Panthers, where Dave Canales let us know something, said, please don't actually say this, but it gives us some great background. So when you're a part of those production meetings, you're getting insight into how games are being called, on how players are being used, on what's happening behind the scenes, on what assistant coaches are potentially being used in certain ways. And so if teams are now hesitant to share that much with an owner of an opposing team, that's only fair. That maybe perhaps hurts Tom Brady's broadcast crew a little bit because they're not getting access to the same information as perhaps another crew is. And it's also incumbent upon Tom Brady as an owner of the Raiders to use whatever information he has access to. Look, when we met with Pete Carroll, he told us it is mind-blowing to have a member of ownership understand competition the way that Tom Brady does. We know that Pete Carroll's central philosophy is all about being as competitive as you can be. Pete Carroll is not doing his job if he's not using the resource that Tom Brady is. If Tom Brady is that competitive, obviously he's going to use whatever information is available to him to help his team. So that's why this really is a thing, Haley. And it's interesting. It will be interesting to see how the league handles it and how teams handle it.
It is definitely interesting. I think that's the best way to put it. The Raiders get the Commanders on Sunday, who, as we know, Brady had Washington in week one. So it's going to be an ongoing story, I'm sure. Aditi, let's get to your game, though. The Texans traveling to take on the Jags Sunday, 1 o'clock on CBS. When it comes to the series, Houston has won 12 of the last 14. But as we've seen through the first 2 weeks, Aditi, C.J. Stroud continues to struggle. The offensive line continues to struggle. And I think Nick Chubb was a positive moment for the offense. It's been pretty stagnant from that front. So how can Houston get the offense going here in week 3?
Well, look, that offensive line was completely rebuilt. There was a decision made to go in a different direction there. You have a new play caller. It feels as if there's a little bit of a struggle right now. What I noticed most from last week's game was how long it is taking for the Texans to essentially get the play call in, get it conveyed in the huddle, and then break the huddle. And of course, that sets an offense back when you don't have a lot of time to send players in motion, see what the defense is doing, diagnose what the defense is giving you. Now, the Panthers, I can tell you, had that same problem week 1, and then week 2 rectified it. Dave Canales told us that he just shaved 2 seconds off of the play clock during practice. So I'm curious to talk to the Texans, see how they are managing it this week. Is it something that could be that quick or that easy of a fix? You expect some growing pains, but of course, you're in go time right now, and the Texans can't afford to start 0-3, especially when the Colts in the division are 2-0. So you hope to see something. We heard C.J. Stroud talk about how he wants to see more urgency in the building. This is your opportunity right here.
And when you talk about that urgency, we did a segment yesterday, Aditi. Teams that start 0-2 get like a 12% chance of making the playoffs. So to your point, 0-3 makes that number go down significantly. Unfortunately, or fortunately, depending on what side you're on in this matchup, offense has also been a concern for the Jaguars as well. Right. You mix that in with the Trevor Lawrence, Liam Cohen spat that we saw during that loss to the Bengals for Jacksonville. And Aditi, while everyone was talking about Travis Hunter and his potential, we're kind of missing Brian Thomas Jr. out there. The lack of production just hasn't been there. What more can you tell us about what we can expect out of him in week 3?
Haley, Brian Thomas was absolutely unstoppable last year, and he had a spot on my Rookie of the Year ballot simply because there was nothing else on that offense. Every defense was keying in on him, and he still was producing. This is a young man that I met at the draft. He works insanely hard. There is no drama. It appears 2 games in that there's a little bit of a sophomore slump, but he is so talented that the coaching staff can certainly help him here. Motion him a little bit more to get him some looks. Make him the #1 option over and over and over again until he gets going. And Haley, he's getting a lot of heat right now for that play, of course, where it looks like he stopped in the middle and just made, as our Logan Ryan called it, a business decision. But Trevor Lawrence had no business throwing the ball there. You never throw that ball because of the danger that you put your wide receiver in, and because Thomas simply wasn't open. So that's a little bit unfair. I do know that the Jaguars are trying to take a few things off his plate in the public space right now this week. Hopefully that helps him a little bit. And the Liam Cohen, Trevor Lawrence thing, Haley, I can't wait to learn more about that. All I know is that a few years ago, former Jaguars coach Doug Peterson told me he is dying to get more energy, more fire out of Trevor Lawrence, who is one of the most even-keeled guys in the NFL. I think Trevor Lawrence here saying to Liam Cohen, hey, we've got to forget the last play and move on to the next play is indeed fair. Liam Cohen is indeed a new head coach. Let's see what he says about it in that production meeting where hopefully we get a little extra insight that the general public doesn't.
And hopefully because one of the broadcasters isn't in the booth at those meetings, you'll get all of the great insight for us, Aditi.
Exactly.
Yeah, the wave was crazy, but we'll have to see how it sorts itself out. Before we let you go, though, I do want to ask you about Joe Burrow, a guy who you've covered several times over your career. We know he's headed to IR, that grade 3 turf toe injury last week. Really another injury and is what has been frustrating through his career to that standpoint. Optimistically, Aditi, they say 3 months is when he can return. But tell us, I guess, what you've learned about Joe Burrow in these moments when he's dealt with injury. I mean, you see it on the screen here. It's been a tough go here. How is Joe Burrow expected to approach this 3 months?
Well, let's start with this one. I will not tolerate any of this China doll kind of slander. This is not about Joe Burrow being fragile. This is not at all about Joe Burrow being soft. However, Joe Burrow may need to be protected from himself. And so I go back 15 years to the Pittsburgh Steelers when they moved on from Bruce Arians and brought in Todd Haley. Offensive coordinator Todd Haley was given a very, very, very strict instructive from ownership on down. You need to help Ben Roethlisberger protect him from himself. You need to design an offense that does a better job of keeping Roethlisberger upright, and in his case, getting rid of the ball faster. Now, you see the Bengals. They're constantly dropping back. That's what Joe Burrow likes to do. But sometimes you need to run the ball a little bit more committedly. You need to deal with the play-action pass game. You have to go get some guys helping chip on the edge. And you also have to invest in your offensive line. So Joe Burrow is a really smart player. He does not take bad sacks. It is not fair to compare him to Russell Wilson, but the team itself can certainly help Joe Burrow a bit. And you know what, Haley? This is one of the top quarterbacks, one of the most dynamic players in our league. It really is such a disappointment to all of us that 3 of his 6 seasons have been derailed, destroyed, whatever word you want to use, by injury.
230 total sacks taken by Joe Burrow since entering the league in 2020. That is obviously the most in the playoffs, or that's the most all time. It includes the playoffs as well. So to your point, it goes to show you that he is getting beat up out there. Aditi, a lot for us to follow this week, but we're excited to catch you on the sidelines this week. Have a good call, and we look forward to checking in with you as the season rolls along. A lot to get to on CBS this week. Of course, we just talked about Aditi's game. She'll be at the Texans-Jags game, keeping her eye on Liam Cohen and Trevor Lawrence, but we've also got Bengals Vikings, and then in that late window, Broncos Chargers and the Saints at the Seahawks.